And I honestly wasn't quite sure what it meant. Can I go back here and do this for the other mic? Okay. Sorry, Amanda. So I didn't really know what it meant, though I've run my mouth long enough that, like, so I can tell my board, like, this is a thing, and then we've worked on data. So my presentation, you gave me the clicker, didn't you? Is pretty simple. I'm going to tell you right now how to get your board and staff to do anything and everything you ever want them to do. Very easy.
Does it apply to husbands?
No promises on husbands, sorry. You just have to ask. So yeah, you have to ask, and I know it sounds simple, but and oversimplified, but it's really truly not. So I thought I would unpack that a little bit for everyone, but I do need to cover a few assumptions at first. So I'm going to assume, and if these aren't true, then I'm always happy to help in any way that I can. I'm going to assume that you all use consent agendas, leaving strategic conversation time in your board meetings. I'm going to assume that you have a good relationship with your board. Some of you may not, and that's okay, and I'm happy to help walk you through how you get one. I'm going to assume that you know the difference between a board and a staff role. It's a large assumption, but I'm going to assume it. I'm also going to assume that if you don't have staff, that you are smart enough to translate what I'm about to say into a working committee and on your own. So you are smart enough to do that. I respect all of you in this room. I know you can do it. Okay, and if not, again, I'm happy to help in any way that you need. So I was thinking about how to do this, and I thought, well, let's just go through the, W's and H, right? So if it's as simple as ask, the question is, who do you ask? And on a board level, you're going to talk to your board chair, and you're just going to ask to put it on the agenda. Anything that you want to get done, in particular this, like, hey, I was thinking we could talk about our donor numbers, because I think we're losing donors, and I want to talk about that a little bit at the board meeting and see what anybody has to say. And they're going to say yes. And so there you go. That's exactly how you start this conversation. You ask for help. And then on the data side of that, you ask your staff for help and say, hey, will you guys please help me with getting these numbers and preparing for this board meeting? And they will do that. That's as simple as that. So that's who you ask. Now, what do you ask? That's a little bit trickier and can be kind of scary, but you ask the big questions. I mean, you drop that big old problem right in their laps, and you are comfortable not knowing the answers at this point, even though you might have an idea. It doesn't really matter. You're asking them the questions. So assuming that they're having strategy level conversations, you want to lay out the full problem. We're hemorrhaging donors. Based on other conversations you've heard from them, we have looming retirees, right? How many, I have two board members who are major employers. Remember when we talked about that, how many of your employees, what percentage of your employees are going to retire in the next 5 years? 45%, 50%. So they help you explain the problem, and then you're comfortable enough to leave the meeting with the problem still on the table. Don't try to solve it, just leave it out there. On the data side, you think very, very small. So if you need a staff or a committee to help you get this done, bring it down to their level. They're not dumb. I'm not saying that in any way. Bring it down to their work. So if you have this giant problem you lay on the board, you bring the problem to tactical with your staff. Think about how this affects their work and how it applies to their work and how they can help in their work. You just ask for help. Okay, so when is the next one? I suggest asking before you bring the idea. So it's their organization, you ask the question, and then you ask that before you bring the idea, even if you have the idea first. I thought of a metaphor. Maybe it's an analogy, I don't really know the difference. So, sewing. Has anybody ever sewn before? Sewers? I'm looking at you, Penny Lee. Right? Okay. So when you sew, you pick out the fabric first, right? You pick out the thread, it kind of has to match. You gotta get your machine, you gotta make sure it's not broken, you gotta find it, right? Where's the outlet close enough, and the pedal, and all this kind of stuff. So you have to get prepared. You have to know what you're doing, know all your materials. And then you have to get the bobbin right, and you gotta get it underneath, and you have to pick the right needle, and you have to do all that. So you're ready to start, and then you have to line everything up, and you have one hand back here guiding it, and you have your foot on a pedal going the right pace, and then you're gathering up the material here, and you're feeding it through, and then you totally mess it up, so you gotta back it up. Right? That's when. This is how this works. It's all the time, before and after, and don't be afraid to go back and retrace.
And rip it out.
And rip it out. Seam ripper's your best friend. So when is present big problems, big questions, and then you present big answers. So when you bring these ideas to them, it is in response to a giant problem that they're wrestling with, and you have brought them the solution, or a possible solution. So, where? Everywhere. Every single place you can ever think of, you ask questions and ask for their help and ask for information. And this is where you stretch your muscles for the power of listening. Critical listening. In every room that you're in, no matter what you're talking about, you're listening for something else. And so then, when you're in that board meeting, when you're laying out that problem or presenting the solution, Maureen, do you remember when we talked about your issue retaining new employees? I really think this might solve that, and then you have their interests. They are, many of your board members are business owners, they have business issues, and they tell you about them because we are the community's therapists. And so all you have to do is remind them of what they asked you and then present the answer. So you have to be listening everywhere. In terms of data, tell your staff, tell your employees, or tell your volunteers anywhere that every committee, every meeting you go to, gather names, first name, last name, email, at a bare minimum. Gather all of that. Put it in a spreadsheet. Just make sure that you're asking everywhere. Okay, why? Because it's not about you, on both levels. If you're doing this job and you're making it about you, then you're doing it wrong. Nope, not yet. Oh yeah, go ahead. Just keep it turned over. So this is the board's organization. It's not yours and it's not mine. They own the public trust, and if you're orienting them and you have a good relationship with them, then it is theirs, and you are there in partnership with them to help them do their job. And so you have to ask questions and you have to honor those answers. From a staff perspective, not only do you have to pass that down and say it's not about you either, it's not about you and the committees that you work with, so you need to serve those committees just the way that I serve the board, but also you're there for your staff, right? You're there for your volunteers. You're there to empower them and connect them to the next level too. So at the end of the day, you need to ask because it's not about you. And then how, everybody's got a sheet now, okay, yeah, so don't turn the sheet over, that's the next part. But to me, if you're being your authentic self, that's how you ask the board. If you truly believe it's not about you, and if you truly believe it's their job to lead this organization all across the communities, then you just authentically ask them what they think you should do, because it is up to them. Now, as far as your staff, gamify it. So,
You feel that.
I did feel it, and I will share. So, on your tables, you have a communication called Project Wildcat, which is adapted from a competitive process from United Way of Central Indiana. As we all know, they are early adopters and leaders and inventors of this space for us and dragging us along, whether we liked it or not, which of course we like it. And so, identifying the key data points, they'd already done that work for us, and so we scaled it down where we don't have that many employees, we don't have that many volunteers, we're not able to do it on that scale, and we are smart enough to translate it to our market and be able to deliver on it. And so we started Project Wildcat, because if you were in this room for the last couple of years, you remember Ann talking about Project Rubicon, right? Well, we have something called the Wildcat Creek in Howard County, and it is, just that, it's a creek, but that's okay. We are a manufacturing heritage, and there may or may not be some gross stuff in Wildcat Creek, but this is the way that we made it fun for our staff. And if you notice one of the dates on there, it was last November. So in terms of when do we ask for things, I've started preparing with data long ago because it's a good idea to know who your donors and volunteers are anyway and how to get a hold of them. And this way, it builds a culture into your entire team that they're always asking for help, they're always meeting new people, and then they translate that and convert that into something you can use. So I will let you read that at your leisure. But one of the things I wanted to point out on there, there's kind of a quote in the middle, and this is where I might leave you because, oh, I have it, I know it, I said it, was, this is not smooth like, hey guys, Sunday afternoon kayaks, wanna get together and we'll put the cooler on the back. Like, this is like legit rough waters, and you're probably gonna run into a few dead fish that got murdered by the toxic stuff in the river, I don't know. But this is not easy, and there are a lot of pitfalls, and so, but it's okay because I have another song. You ready? Maybe.
It's your exit song.
Huh?
This is
It's
your
my
exit
exit
song.
song. Because we really do have a great team of individuals. And if we rely on each other, you're really all I need to get by.